أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So I just want to ask if you have any questions. All right, so just be in a couple of minutes, Imam Anas will do an introduction, a general introduction on fiqh, so that we get context for why we're discussing some of what we're discussing. But I wanted to ask if there were any questions that you had or that you came up with while we were on our lunch, just so that we can take a note of them to answer them. So any questions that you thought about, or anything that came up that you want to ask now? One? All right.
Okay, so normally whenever we do a fiqh intensive, we do an introduction to fiqh, and some of you present today, this is your first fiqh session with us. So I wanted to do just a quick refresher with regards to the process, how Sharia works. How does legislation work in Islam? And so you've heard the term madhab being used, you've heard the term Sharia being used. And I wanted to give some clarity to both. The first thing that I want to state is that the Sharia is a term that is used to refer to sacred law. Okay, Sharia governs everything from how you relieve yourself up to business transactions. So it covers the entirety of your life. So when you hear people referencing, you know, Sharia, we don't want Sharia law. I'm sure we've all heard this, right? So you need to understand that when you make salah, Sharia governs that. When you make wudu, Sharia governs that. When you go to the bathroom, you have to clean yourself, Sharia governs to that. Okay, so Sharia is already present in your lives, and so that is Sharia. The other, which is the madhab, and the term madhab is a reference to a school of law. And this is again another reference back again to Sharia. Now, all of the schools are based on principles. Okay, and the principles vary from madhab to madhab, but they all share in common 4 things. All right, 4 principles that all of the madhab share in common. The first and the foremost is the Quran, is the first and primary source of legislation in Islam. There isn't a single madhab that does not consider the Quran as a primary source. All of the scholars are in agreement with that. Then you have the Sunnah. All of the scholars are in agreement with the Sunnah as being the second source of legislation in Islam. There's no disagreement with that. Okay? Now, that ranking, the Sunnah does not outrank the Quran ever. So that we're clear. The Quran is here and the Sunnah is here. So that we're clear. So at no point is the Sunnah here and the Quran here, nor are they on par. Okay? Now, there are opinions with regards to the usage of the Sunnah, and sometimes it appears that the Sunnah sometimes is placed on par with the Quran, or sometimes even the Sunnah supersedes or trumps the Quran, which is not the majority opinion of the scholars with regards to legislation. Okay? The Quran is what we refer to as qat'i, meaning we believe that the words of Allah that were revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the way of the angel Jibreel alayhi salam are absolutely true. So there's no question about the validity of every single verse in the Quran. There's no question about that. The Sunnah, on the other hand, we believe that the Sunnah, there's a degree of speculation with regards to whether or not the entirety of hadith, or those traditions that have been narrated, that have reached us, are entirely valid. Okay, and we're using the term Sunnah loosely because Sunnah has various meanings. And in a Sharia, from a Sharia standpoint, the Sunnah is a reference to what Prophet ﷺ said, did, or approved of. And then, of course, it also means an act that is recommended and not necessarily obligatory. Make it, yeah.
Could you repeat that? You said the Sunnah. I didn't, for some, I was writing what you said before, and I didn't catch what you said. But the Sunnah is.
Yeah, so the Sunnah is, so we believe that the Quran in its entirety is valid. The Quran is for divinely protected. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hijr, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا نحن نزلنا الذكر وإنا له لحافظون. Verily we have revealed the remembrance, and verily we will protect it. So the process of protecting and guarding the Quran, that in itself, again, men guard the Quran. Okay? So the Quran isn't guarded in print. And I need us to understand this. That Quran is not guarded in print. Quran is guarded in the hearts of men. And I want you to understand that when you read the Quran, reading the Quran is one thing, reciting the Quran is something totally different. So if you don't understand and know the rules of tajweed, you will misread the Quran. So that's not something that's all those symbols and markings and stuff in the Quran. You have to be able to understand. You have to know how to read that. So it's not like you opening a book and just reading the book. Now, what I said with regards to the hadith, that the hadith, the hadith can be disputed, the Quran cannot. In essence, disputing the validity of hadith, nobody's going to dispute the validity of an ayah. So then they're not the same. They don't carry the same weight. So that's why the Sunnah is referred to as dhanni and not qat'i. Qat'i meaning indisputable.
Could you write those two words up there?
What, qat'i and dhanni?
Yeah. Indisputable.
You're looking for the Arabic or the English transliteration?
No, the Arabic.
Well, for the benefit of everyone here, we'll write both. قطعي قاف طاء عين ياء. And yeah, قطعي. سكون أبو طاء. Yeah, سكون أبو طاء. Yeah, قطعي. قطعي. So you erase the A. No, in the transliteration. Apostrophe.
It's called.
قطعي. قطعي. And ظني. ظني again is disputable, meaning that ظني. So ظني would be ذال. I'm sorry, ظا noon ya. With the shadda over the noon, of course. ظني. So قطعي and ظني. قطعي.
قطعي.
Yes.
قطعي means indisputable.
Indisputable. Meaning a person can't dispute the validity of, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. There's no disputing that. There's no disputing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. You can't dispute that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, made a particular statement, or was seen doing a particular thing, or was present when something was done, and he didn't say anything. That can be that type of report can be disputed. That's why you have the gradings of the different hadith from the a term that is used to describe the highest level of a hadith, the highest grade of a hadith, which is authentic, to the lowest grade, which is fabricated. Okay, so we have.
You took the I now?
No, he was right. He just took it out.
There you go.
All right.
It's cosmetics. Okay.
So is that the I?
That's Ayn. So Quran, Sunnah, then you have Ijma'. And Ijma' is scholarly consensus. Meaning that scholars in a generation, people, again, everybody had to be present at the same time, agreed on a matter. Okay, so you can't have ijma' across generations. That doesn't exist. Okay, so basically, scholars agreeing that this is the law. Then you have qiyas, which is analogy, comparing a ruling from one case and applying that ruling to another case is called qiyas. So across the madhahib, generally, those are the four that the scholars are in agreement with, and you have others depending on the madhab, the sources for legislation. The four madhahib that we often hear are the madhab of Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Hanafi madhab, Maliki madhab, Shafi'i madhab, and Hanbali madhab. And I'm sure we've heard these terms before. Al-Imam Abu Hanifa, Al-Imam Malik, and Al-Imam Shafi'i were contemporaries, with Imam Abu Hanifa being the oldest. And even though Imam Abu Hanifa was the oldest, Imam Abu Hanifa was born in Iraq, and he used to travel from Basra, which is in Iraq. He would travel to Medina to visit with Imam Malik, and he would study with him.
So Shafi, Imam
Shafi'i, Abu Hanifa, Malik, and Shafi'i were contemporaries, meaning that they crossed paths. And not only did they cross paths, Al-Imam al-Shafi'i actually studied with Imam Malik.
He was a student of
He studied with Imam Malik, and he also studied with some of the peoples that Imam Malik studied with as well. Now, for us, and we need to understand, because we go through this whenever we discuss fiqh, because it is our job, our duty, and our responsibility to correct some misunderstandings with regards to Sharia and how Sharia works. Because for some, or some of what we received with regards to this is that everything is one way. And there is no ikhtilaf, there is no difference of opinion in Islam. And that's something that, and I don't know if any of you have ever heard that there's no ikhtilaf. If you've ever heard that there's no ikhtilaf, then know that that's not true. That's misguidance. And unfortunately, I'm going to use the term propaganda. That's propaganda for people who adhere to a particular way of thinking. That there is no ikhtilaf, there's no disagreement with regards to fiqh matters. Now let's talk a little for a second about ikhtilaf. What I want to say about ikhtilaf is that when you look at fiqh, the differences of opinions are they're not large in number, and they're mainly focused on or in the area of business transactions. Mainly. So when it comes to worship and salah, fasting, zakat, all that, you may have some differences here and there, but it's nothing major. The majority of the differences are where? In business transactions. So the things that people like to focus on, and we have to make an issue out of, things that we shouldn't make an issue out of. The adhan. So you didn't call the adhan the way I think the adhan should be called. All right, and you have different versions of the adhan, all of which include Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I'm sorry, all of which include Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah, Allahu Akbar, and la ilaha illallah. Now, it's the number of times you repeat each phrase. That's where you have the discrepancy. The scholars have agreed across generations. So each generation, the scholars in each generation have agreed that all of the versions of the adhan and the iqamah are valid. So if someone comes and says, well, no, this is how you call the adhan, well, that's according to somebody's interpretation. And I'm going to end with this. Usually, those who promote this thinking that there's one way, they adhere to the Hanbali madhab with regards to fiqh.
Mm-hmm. Whether they know it or not.
Yeah, whether they know it or not. Those who really push it, they know that, because there is no way you cannot make salah without adhering to one of the madhab. It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So your practice is not based on pulling from sources. That's not you pulling from the sources. So I want to find something else. So I go to Bukhari. You go to Bukhari, you're going to find a piece. You go to Muslim, you're going to find a piece. You go to the Quran, you're going to find a piece. All of those pieces put together form the complete package. So this is how you make salah, this is how you make wudu, etc., etc., etc. So the notion that, and I will always say this, anyone that I come into contact with, and I will say this, anybody I come into contact, I'm going to tell you, if somebody tells you a new shahada and you need a copy of Bukhari, you don't need that. What do you need a copy of Bukhari for? What do you need Bukhari for? What do you need Muslim for? What do you need these references for? What you need is a Quran. That's what you need. So a person becomes Muslim. What they need, what they must have is a Quran. Not some means of indoctrination. You got to have this hadith collection for what? What do you need? It's a reference. It's like having an encyclopedia. What am I going to do with that? So then the person, for me to practice my faith, now I'm going through this chapter, and you may have in the same chapter conflicting hadith. How do you reconcile that? And the hadith may conflict with a verse in the Quran. How do you reconcile that? That's fiqh. So when you want to learn how to practice, you go to a fiqh manual, not a hadith book. That's how that works. So again, going back to the Sharia, those four, the sources of legislation, primary, we'll call them primary sources of legislation, Quran, Sunnah, in that order. Quran, Sunnah, Ijma', which is scholarly consensus, and then Qiyas. So I'm going to tag Imam, yes.
I just want to
So, and in the Maliki madhab, you have one of the sources of legislation is the actions of people of Medina, or amalu ahlul Medina. Okay? Now, amalu ahlul Medina during the time of Imam Malik was a valid source of legislation. Today it is not. Why was it that during the time of Imam Malik, why was it that the actions of people of Medina was a valid source of legislation? I mentioned to you earlier, when I mentioned the hadith, and I mentioned that Imam Malik narrated that Nafi' heard from Ibn Umar, right? So you look at what you look at the generations. You have the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you have Ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar was a companion, which means that he was alive during the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He heard this from him. He observed this from him. Nafi' was a servant of Abdullah ibn Umar. So he lived in his home. So he learned from Abdullah ibn Umar.
Is that the golden chain?
Malik, Imam Malik heard the hadith from Nafi'. So when you talk about the actions of the people of Medina, you have to remember that Imam Malik was living in a time where Islam in Medina was still pure. And legislation happened in Medina. So what the people of Medina did at the time was Islam. In his mind, if there is a hadith, he wouldn't take the actions of the people of Medina, would not supersede the Quran, it would not supersede the Sunnah, a hadith. If you had a hadith, you go to hadith, and he would not go with what the people of Medina did. But if there was conflict with regards to a hadith versus several hadith, right? Then he would look at what did the people of Medina do? He went with the practice of the people. The people would know. So the inherited practice of those people. So you didn't have hundreds of years between the expiration of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the passing of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the time of Imam Malik. You didn't have hundreds of years. Yes.
For Imam Hanbali, what was the period after? Because if these three men, all right, Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi were all contemporaries, what was the time span between them and Imam Hanbali?
About 100 years. It was time.
So that is the important matter.
So, yeah, well, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't want you leaving here with that understanding, because they're all valid.
They're all valid, right?
They're all valid. And Imam Ahmad is our Imam.
Yes.
So I don't want anybody leaving here saying, no, they're all valid. What we are disputing is that others are attempting to invalidate the other imams. So the only opinion is the opinion of this imam. That's not how that works. Nobody has that type of monopoly. As they said, as a matter of fact, Imam Malik said that the only person, he said, كُلٌّ يُؤْخَذُ مِنْ رَأْيِهِ وَيُرَدْ إِلَّا صَاحِبُ هَذَا الْقَبْرِ. Everybody's opinion can be rejected except for that person laying right there. And he was pointing towards the grave of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when it comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that's it. A conclusion that a scholar may come to can be overruled by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. But again, that has to happen within context, legal context. Not, well, the Prophet said it, so that's it. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. Simply because the Prophet says, A, B, C, and D. There's legal reasoning. How did you get to this conclusion? And it can't be, well, the hadith says A, B, C, and D. It can't be just that, and sometimes it is just that. But often it isn't. So he's about to mention here the actions of people of Medina.
It's coming a little later.
Yeah, it's going to come a little later, but I did want to mention that now. So I'm going to tag Imam Qais, and he's going to continue reading, inshallah.
All right, so we're on page 4, at the bottom of page 4. So the fast of Ramadan is not mandatory until the completion of 30 days of Sha'ban if the hilal is not visible before that. So this means that if we see the hilal at the end of the 29th day, then we start fasting the month of Ramadan right then. If we do not see the hilal, then we complete 30 days of Sha'ban, and then we start the month of Ramadan right after that. So no month is going to have more than 30 days. And no month is going to have fewer than 29 days. That's basically the gist of this statement here. If by some chance, and I'm not sure if we cover it later on, if by some chance the calculation is off, so let's say we were going with the sighting and it's very clear, and we'll touch on this a bit later on as well, and it becomes very clear that we started late or a group started late, right? So let's say they started Ramadan when a day later than they should have started, quote unquote, because of the sighting of the moon. And then the new moon comes, right? Not the moon of Shaban, but the moon of Shawwal comes, and they've only fasted 28 days of Ramadan. But it's very clear that we've started the new month of Shawwal, right? It's clear, the moon is there, the moon is visible. What do we do? When we come to this on the next page, so I'll leave that up there, look out for that on the next page, right? Because it's going to be very clear what should happen. And I can even give us an idea of where we'll go with this. Basically, anytime the new moon is sighted, it is incumbent upon us to either start the month or end the month, no matter what we think our calculation is. So if we see the new moon for Ramadan has indicated that we're supposed to start Ramadan, then it is incumbent upon us to start the month of Ramadan, as long as we are following the tradition of the moon has been sighted, we need to start that month. I am not getting into whether or not it's a local sighting, international sighting, or anything like that. This is if we are following the path of the new moon is visible and we've seen it, we have to start. There's no dispute about that. We can't extend it beyond what is clearly visible. So let's continue. If the crescent is visible, the fast becomes obligatory. So that's basically a summary of what I just said. It's there, we have to start fasting. And similarly, we'll read shortly, if we see it, we have to end the fast. There is no dispute about that. The testimony of a sighting of the crescent of Ramadhan is not accepted from a person unless that person is credible. And we discussed a lot about credibility earlier on, meaning that their report would be accepted for the sighting of Shawwal, that is, 2 upstanding men or more. The testimony of women and slaves, not accepted. If the sky is cloudy, there is no disagreement among Malik and his companions that concerning the testimony of 2 upstanding men in a province, city or town, if the sky is clear and there is no barrier that prevents them or blocks a clear sighting in it, and 2 upstanding men report a sighting in a city or town, it is the case that it has been stated that people should commence the fast based on their testimony, the way their testimony would be accepted in any other matters. Meaning, if 2 credible men come and say that they have sighted it, then we have to begin the fast. All right? And it goes with all of the things that we discussed in terms of credibility earlier on. It has also been stated that the independent report in the case of a clear sky, without any testimony of anyone else, right? So it's just the 2 men. So it has also been said that the independent report, both of them, is cause for suspicion, and suspicious testimony is not acceptable. What does this mean? If the sky is clear and only 2 men say that they have sighted it, how do we view that? As suspicious. Why? Because if the sky is clear, more than 2 people should have been able to see it. And if only these 2 individuals come and they say that they're the only ones who have seen it, we view that with suspicion, and suspicious testimony is not acceptable to enforce any obligation in fiqh. Are we good?
Yeah.
So again, this is if the sky is clear. 1 second. All right. Whoever ascribes to this position from amongst the companions of Malik and others state, if the conditions are clear, it is necessary to have the testimony of a large number of persons, right? So this is where we get the corroboration. If it's clear, multiple people should be able to report what has been cited. The testimony of 2 individuals is accepted only when the conditions are cloudy or other similar circumstances. So if there's a chance, well, if it was difficult to sight the moon, right? Whether it be cloudy conditions or because of the part of the land we are in and we are surrounded by tall buildings that make seeing the moon where it is, where it becomes visible, difficult for us. But we have 2 credible individuals who have said that they have seen it independently of each other, then we need to accept it. Now, it's very important to understand what we mean by 2 individuals, independent sightings. If me and my friend, if me and my brother are standing there, and we are both standing on the same spot looking for the moon, and I see it, but he does not, but he trusts me. I'm like, no, look, it's right there. Look carefully, you'll see it. And he's like, you know what, I really can't see it, but I trust you. And then we both go back and say that we've seen the moon. That doesn't count as 2 credible sightings. Each individual must see the moon on their own. I shouldn't have to convince you that it's there. Right? It is one thing for an individual to say, you know what, I'm not seeing it, but then it's made clear. Okay, no, are you looking in the right place? Look, it should be there, and that's where it should be. Right? But again, this should be credible. And I would even argue that credibility means that they know how to sight the moon. This shouldn't be someone who is coming to the first time sighting a moon. They have no idea how to sight it, and they have to be taught where to look for it. Then in that moment, they're like, oh yeah, I see it. That would be questionable as well. The reason why is this.
You have to have the skill set in order for you to complete that task. It's like anything else. I mean, we got to respect our faith. I mean, sighting the moon is a skill. And if a person doesn't have the skill set, then you have no business trying to do that.
So let's say
you can learn how to do it. You can be trained on how to do it. But if you don't have the skill set, why am I going to listen to you? I mean, That's not what you do. You're not a Hilal sighter. That's not what, we don't know you to have that skill. Absolutely. So listen, when I mentioned earlier about the desert people, that's what they rely on that for their sense of direction. So they have that skill set. I don't have the skill set. If I'm looking up at the moon, I'm looking up at the moon. If I see a dark spot, I see a dark spot. I don't know what that is. The only time I recognize a hilal if it's clearly visible, that's a hilal. That's a crescent. And doesn't take any skill. That's like, this is an apple, that's an orange. But anything other than that, the science of sight, I would go to Imam Pace and Imam Pace, how do you do this? Because he has that skill set. I don't. I've never sat it the hell out before.
So that goes back to the point of, let's say I know how to do it, and I bring someone along with me for the first time to do it, right? They have no understanding of how to do it. But then I say, hey, if you look there, look over that building, it should be pointing south, this is how you should see it. And then after a while, they're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I think I see it. Okay, good, I see it there. Anyone would know that usually when you think you've seen it for the first time, you haven't seen it. You really haven't seen it, right? It really takes, you need to know what to look for, because it could be some aberration in the sky. It could be so many different things that makes you think that you've seen it. So I'm going back to the point of 2 independent verifiable sightings. Can it be someone who is there just learning how to sight it for the first time? Because there's a high possibility or probability that they may be seeing the wrong thing and calling it the new moon. And for most of us, when we see the hilal, we are really seeing it the 2nd and 3rd day. For most of us, the layperson, when we look at the hilal and we're like, oh, the month has started, this is really about the 2nd day we are seeing it.
It's no longer hilal.
Right. But you understand the context of what I mean. Right? This is usually like 2 or 3 days in. Right? So just to put that into context of what verifiable sightings by independent people mean. So large number of persons, accepted when the conditions are cloudy, right? The first position is the summation of Malik's position, and it is what is commonly known of him or popular, and it is what is relied upon. If the crescent is seen in a town or city explicitly, or if a report is confirmed by an indisputable testimony that was then reported to others by way of 2 upstanding citizens, fasting becomes incumbent upon the people, and it is not permissible for them not to fast. Meaning, if we have the testimony, even if we all haven't seen it, and we have the credible witnesses, and then it's relayed to other people, then we have to fast. Meaning that we can take the chain of reports within our locality, right? So if we have a system whereby some individuals see it, and then they report it to other organizations, and other organizations then tell us that we have to fast, it's incumbent upon us to fast, if that is a system that we have adopted. And that is a system for that locale, which is what many of us have done and continue to do for many years. So this year is the proof of that process. Are we good? Mm-hmm. Abdul Malik stated a similar position regarding a clear sighting. He stated regarding the testimony, it is not necessary to accept the testimony, except in the case of a town whose judge has accepted the testimony, which then makes the fast incumbent upon all residents of that town. So if there is no system in place, and one person has one, and you have people who are saying it, but you don't follow, but there's no system in place, then it's not mandatory for you to start to fast, right? Meaning this, if there's no religious authority in the town and everyone is just there doing their own thing, and I hear Fulan say, you know what, I heard that these 2 men who are credible say that they have sighted the moon. Is it incumbent upon me to accept his report and then start fasting? No, that is not incumbent upon me, because there is no established system whereby I have to accept that, All right. However, if a leader, a religious leader in the town, or a judge in the town, a authority in the town has said, hey, we got this report from outside, and all of us are going to start fasting, and we heard that that individual, that religious authority has said that we should commence fasting, then it is incumbent upon us to start the fast.
This is a strange question, but I just want to know, if there's a person in the city, let's say Philadelphia, and say most of the communities follow the method, and but there's maybe two communities that say they've seen it, and you say you might know these two people, and they have upright character and everything, but you know that they don't adhere to the four methods they oppose it. Can you take that testimony?
I'll let you have it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just want to know.
All right. So the same thing, the exception is if the testimony is accepted by the head imam or governor of the caliph for life, then the fast is incumbent upon everyone. So all this is summarizing here is that if somebody who is in authority, who is Muslim, who fits all of the criteria, and they have the authority over that population, and they say that the fast has begun, then we have to begin the fast based on that say-so, because they're in that position of authority to accept that. This is a summation of the position of the Malikis of Baghdad. It has also been stated that every country has its own sighting, and they are not compelled to follow anyone else. So what does this mean? It means that it is completely fine for you to say that you are following your own locale. And whatever the definition of locale is, we are not even going to get into that right now, because in some cases, locale is your immediate vicinity. In some cases, it could be the continent. In other cases, it could be a certain time zone. We're not going to get into that, right? Whatever is defined as locale, it's permissible for you to say, I'm only following the established sighting of my locale. And that's an established position. It has also been stated concerning countries that are far apart that if a sighting is confirmed during the day, that people should stop eating and commence the fast to make up that day. So this is the other side of that, right? That if we're accepting the position of, if anywhere we get a credible sighting, and our position is that we follow the sighting from anywhere it comes, as long as it's credible, then, and we accept that as a valid sighting, then the fast becomes incumbent upon us. So if it's in the middle of the day, we treat it as what we've said earlier on. You observe the sanctity of the fast, and you make up that day because it is an established day of Ramadan. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier on. You didn't know the fast has started. You got confirmation that the fast began, right? So let's say you woke up after Fajr, someone says, hey, the moon was sighted. You know it's verifiable. You know it's valid. You did all of your stuff to say, okay, you know what? Is this really true? You did all of your research. You found out that, yes, Ramadan has started. You already eaten breakfast after Fajr has come in. What do? You accept and acknowledge that Ramadan has started. You stop eating. So you engage as though it's Ramadan. You stop eating, but you make up that day. Because that is a day that you should have fasted and you did not. So the position is that you make up that day. Are we clear? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go to the other end of it. You fasted 28 days. You're about to start fasting on your 29th day. Someone says, hey, why are you fasting? Is there Eid? You're like, what? So you go through all of your credibility checks and you're like, yeah, it's the Eid. Confirm sighting. What do? You break your fast, you celebrate the Eid, and you make up your day. Again, this is not if you're jumping from one position to the next. This is you followed your position, but you were misinformed. Right? Or you were doing your sighting, and then at the end of the month, it is very clear that the moon was sighted. There is no dispute that the moon was sighted. You have all of the verification that the moon was sighted, but you only fasted 28 days, and you know it's the Eid. You break your fast, you celebrate the Eid, and then you make up your fast after the Eid day has passed. Right? We cannot fast on the Eid as long as it's verified that it is the Eid. There is no dispute around that. I am not speaking about, or we are not speaking about, our process is to take a local sighting. Another group's process is to take a sighting that is from a different locality, and we now celebrate Eid on 2 different days. That's 2 different issues. Because that process, one process says Eid is this day, the other process says Eid is that day, and we have no way of verifying one. We are fine with that. This is in your locale. You're clear that the moon was sighted, and your process says, no, this is the day of the Eid. You have to stop fasting without question. Are we good? So you may get a question as to why are you fasting on the day of the Eid if one group has acknowledged it as the Eid, but you have not because of your process. You are in essence not fasting on the day of the Eid because you're using 2 different processes. And that is fine, as long as we are still within the boundaries of the Sharia.
Situation in some years gone by, there was a time we were taking international sightings, then we were taking a local and this, that, and the other. There's been times when we got a report that Ramadan started, and then you look up at the halal or the sky 3 days later, and you see that, this is like a 3 or 4 day moon, but people started late or early. What do you do in that situation?
You completed with the calculation, and then at the end of it, you just know what you have to make up or not make up, right? So let's say you started a day late, but you happen to make 29 days, right? But another group made 30 days. Then you're safe. You don't have to do anything else because you've made your minimum. But if at the end you come up short, then you you know it's the Eid, then you go back to what I said earlier, right? Celebrate the Eid and make up whatever days you need to make up. So you go with what you know. So you made the best.
Actually, no. In this scenario, if you only fasted 28 days, you have to fast 29 days. If a person got an erroneous report with regards to the beginning of Ramadan, that's where fa'aqdiru comes in.
Okay.
So if you only fasted 28 days, you have to fast 29.
But if I now see a clear hilal for the start of Shawwal in my locality.
But that's not in your process. You started with a
okay,
report
good. So
that turned out to be erroneous.
Okay, good.
You got that report. You have to, regardless of what's going on, you can't fast 28 days. It's either 29 or 30. You have to complete your 30th day. And you have, you mentioned this, it happens frequently, where you have communities within the same locale that, Eid is being celebrated on sometimes 3 different days. How does that happen? How does it happen? And listen, we get caught up in emotionally, we get caught up in all this stuff. It's all good. It's all good. If that's your process, you're sticking to your process, stick to your process. May Allah accept from us all. That's not, our intention is to get the reward for the fast. That's it. However that happens, inshallah, you'll get your reward. But this is what I meant when I said earlier about when I commented on the person having the skill set, when I spoke about the person that's reporting, the reporter being trustworthy, if it's an individual or if it's an institution or an entity. You have to be trustworthy because you're toying with people's spiritual well-being. And people are trusting that you're going to get it right. So if a person doesn't have the requisite skill set to sight the hilal, that's when you have, well, and you're in the same locale. There ain't two moons. If you're looking at the same thing, you're gonna see it if you have the requisite skill set. Now, if you don't have the skill set, well, I didn't see it, or I thought I saw it. You can't go with I thought I saw it. I thought doesn't work. I thought means that now I'm looking at you suspiciously because I don't trust your judgment or I don't trust your skill set. You're not going to go into an operating room and the doctor's in there. Well, I think the moment the doctor says, I think, you're out the door. It's like, no. But I wake up. And you can't wake out, but you're under, but you're screaming. Can't nobody hear you. It's like, don't touch me. Get away from me. Somebody get me out of here. But we have to listen. The same care we have to take with our spirituality. We have to. It's one of the reasons why we're having these intensives. We're having these classes because it's important like that. We have to take care with our spiritual well-being. In the days of, us doing our best, that's not good enough anymore. That's not good enough anymore. It's not good enough. So even though that continues, I think it was 2 years ago, there was three Eid days.
Yeah.
Well, if we're all, so what's the give here? But we can't focus on that. It is what it is. MashaAllah, keep it pushing. Inshallah, Allah will accept from everybody. But, trusting that the individual or individuals or the entity or entities that you're putting your trust in, that they are competent and trustworthy. There's a difference between being competent and trustworthy. It's simply because you're competent doesn't mean that you're trustworthy. Okay? And simply because you're trustworthy doesn't mean that you're competent. You may not have the skill set, and you got me somewhere and I'm looking around and I'm the only one. And everybody else is going one way and I'm going a different direction. So, yeah.
I just gotta go back just a tiny bit, just for my own clarification. So since we are relying upon calculation, right? Does that mean that the calculation of the new moon is valid for every location on the face of it?
Absolutely.
That's all I want.
However,
that's not
what we do,
It doesn't make it necessary for somebody else.
It doesn't make it
No,
necessary
I'm just
for
talking
someone
about, because what we're talking about is a person he's confirmed already within himself that he's going to agree to a particular method, all right, process, whatever, right? That he's going to stick to that process, right? So if he's sticking to the process of calculation, he's firm that that's what I want to do.
Absolutely. And this is the other thing, and I need to clarify a little bit with regards to that. So calculation meaning that the hilal is sighted somewhere in the world, period, right? Whether that be the very first time zone or the very last time zone. Wherever the hilal is sighted, that's the site of the hilal. It's one moon, it's a single moon. Okay? So wherever the hilal appears first, even if we are not able to physically see it in our time zone, our locale, we're going with that. And that's happened before. And it's happened where, the hilal was with the sighting coincided with not the birth of the new moon, but the appearance of the hilal, because the birth of the new moon is, as I said, you can't see anything.
You can't see that. But what we're talking about now is the crux of the matter of intention, correct?
Correct. Meaning
that our intention, when we're talking about Ramadan, our intention from the onset is to follow this
Yes, so the person who's accepting a report from someone else who they perceive as being credible, right? Then that's all you're charged with. If you accept that, you have the intention, you have the niyyah of fasting in Ramadan, inshallah, Allah will accept your fast. Whether the report was erroneous or not. You believe that the report was credible, the person was a credible, trustworthy individual, competent individual, and you went with that, then your actions are based on your intentions. And whoever messed up, they got to answer for that.
Thank you.
All right.
So it has also been stated concerning countries that are far apart that if a sighting is confirmed, I'm just reading this to continue with the next piece, that if a sighting is confirmed during the day, that people should stop eating and commence to fast and should make up the day. So we established that already, right? We are clear on that. Yes? If this happens concerning the crescent of Shawwal, then breaking the fast is mandatory and praying the Eid prayer before noon becomes mandatory as well. Right? Which we've also stated as well. That if it's clear that it's the Eid and this is the process that you follow, then you have to break your fast if you started fasting and confirm that as the day of the Eid. Yeah? The crescent must be seen before noon or after it, whether it is for the next night. It is for this reason that it is impermissible for a person who has seen the crescent of Shawwal during the day not to fast.
Yeah, I just read that.
Yeah, so one second.
Yeah, what did he say there?
Not to fast. So it just sounds like.
So if you see the crescent, what he's saying is if you see the crescent of Shawwal, right, during the, if you see the crescent of Shawwal, then you are not allowed to fast, is what he's saying. And if you see the crescent of Ramadan, you have to fast.
That's saying something slightly different.
Yeah, but again, these are different opinions that are within the madhab.
Oh, no, sorry. No, it wasn't an opinion because I don't think the translation was a bit because it's saying that it's impermissible. Okay.
Yeah. So if you see the hilal of Shawwal, you're not supposed to fast. So if you see the hilal for Ramadan, you have to fast.
So I think this is just
so in essence, if a person wakes up and they realize that it's Ramadan, you're obligated, we mentioned this at the beginning, you cannot eat. Can't violate sanctity. The same goes with
the end of it.
Yes. But in a situation where you have these different processes, you go with your process. Go ahead.
Whoever sights the crescent for Ramadan alone, meaning a single sighting, must fast, and if he does not, he must make up the day and give expiation if he deliberately breaks his fast. Meaning, Ramadan fasting is an individual obligation. So let's say I go out and I see the crescent and I know that it's the hilal, and I take it back and nobody else believes me. They are not responsible for fasting, but I am. Meaning this, I know how to sight. I go out, I see the hilal. No one else sees it, but I know that what I've seen is the hilal. And I go back, no one else has seen it, and I go back and I say, Imam, the hilal is out there. I saw it. And the Imam is a stickler, he's like, all right, has anyone else seen it? How can we confirm this? The Imam is within his right to say, Imam, no, nobody else has seen this. I can't take this from you. Because he's responsible for his community. Right? So he's like, I can't take this from you. And he's well within his right to say, our community is going to complete 30 days and then we'll fast. But for me, I have seen it. And I know I have seen it. So what do I have to do? I'm like, okay, alhamdulillah, I leave that alone and I go start my fast. I don't have to make a big show about it. Are we good? This will happen very few times. The likelihood of this happening is not a lot, but this is just giving us context with if it happens. This is not for the individual who goes out, thinks they see it, and says, you know what, fine, you guys don't want to believe me, I'm going to do my own thing. That's a whole different matter. That's completely different and outside the scope of what we're talking about here. Short question?
So is that the final, in this category, the ranking category, that last one, kiosk?
No, that doesn't even apply here.
No.
That's not an analogical reasoning or anything.
One, that doesn't apply here. Two, that in the madhab of Imam Malik, you have up to 14. Yes.
Wow.
You have up to 14 sources of legislation. Up to 14. Okay, was agreed upon is 8, but it's up to 14. And in the other madhahib, the minimum is somewhere around 6 or 7.
Yeah. Is this a key question for
No.
this part of the conversation? No?
No.
We can move on?
No, I can wait.
Okay, all right. So so we did that, must fast, and if he does not, he must make up the day and must give expiation if he deliberately breaks his fast. So if I choose not to do it, I choose to go with the community, then I have to tell myself that I'm making up that day. So this also gives me the allowance here to do that. Whoever says the Crescent of Shawwal on his own should break his fast secretly so as not to create fitna or as not to be accused of breaking his fast and as a precautionary measure against the claims of the people of innovation. So same thing at the beginning, at the end. If I cite it for Shawwal, I break my fast, I know that is what it is, but I don't make it a big public announcement. I do it secretly and I observe what is being observed and I continue as normal, right? I eat in private, I go about, I don't eat in public, and then the next day when they're making the Eid prayer, I go join them for the Eid prayer. Question? The fast is not valid unless the person retires with the intention to commence a fast the next day between sunset and dawn of the next day. This is the case with every obligatory fast and non-obligatory fast because actions are judged by their intentions. Meaning this, we have to make intention before we fast. We cannot wake up after the day has started and say, hey, you know what? I should have fasted today. Let me go back and fast. Let me fast today. Our intention cannot be retroactive. It has to happen before that day begins. And that day begins at Subuh, right? That day begins before the first light of dawn. Therefore, and this is for fasts that are mandatory and the ones that are non-mandatory as well. Therefore, obligatory and voluntary fasting is not valid without an intention before Fajr. Malik disliked making the intention every night for the Fajr Ramadan. He stated it suffices one to make the intention during the first night because the intention is then binded to his fast for the remainder of the month, except for the traveler, the menstruating woman, and the sick person. What does this mean? If we have the intention of making the continuous fast, I just need to make my intention before the start of Ramadan, the night before the start of Ramadan, and that suffices for the entire month. If, however, I get sick or I travel and I have to break my fast, or in a case of a woman, she menstruates and she has to break a fast, at the end of that break, whatever the length of that break is, before you resume your fast, you have to make the intention to continue your fast for the month of Ramadan. What does the intention look like? So I'm asking you guys this. What is the intention to fast for Ramadan? What does that look like? Huh?
You said silently.
You say what silently?
I tend to fast for the whole month of Ramadan.
So I have to say these words.
Do you? I don't think.
No.
Go ahead.
Well, for myself, what I do is because I have to feed somebody every day. In my mind, before I go to bed, I'm planning what I'm going to feed that person, which means that I'm planning to fast for the next day.
All right.
For the fast.
All right, good. So what is intention? So when we say intention, what is intention?
The thought to do
a thought to do it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
The same thing, right? Yeah, it's just a consciousness that you know what you're going to do, right? It's not something absent-minded. Is you don't have any specific words for it. So I know it's pushing you a little bit there, Adi. Just permit me, right? So many of us, we may have learned to say very specific words, and that's fine, right? Learning something specific to say is okay, but we don't have to think that because I didn't say this specific thing, that my fast is questionable. As long as I went to bed knowing, hey, you know what? Tomorrow I have to, and you telling yourself, all right, I'm going to wake up for 3:15 so that I can eat. Then that's an intention because you're conscious of what your actions will be, right? And another part of the intention is also knowing who you're doing it for, right? I'm doing this for Allah. So that's also a key part of our intention. I'm going to do this, and I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. This is your intention, consciousness of thought, and knowing where the direction of that thought is, meaning towards Allah, and you're fine with your intention. Whatever words you use around that is fine. Anything to add?
Well, I'm assuming that we're going to come across how you have to, approaching Ramadan, how you have to make this intention. So you're required, so you cannot enter Ramadan. You can't wake up and the day of and say, I'm going to fast this day. So before you retire, you know that Ramadan is to begin the following day. You have to make your intention to fast Ramadan. Now, the question is, are you required to renew that intention every evening? The answer to that is, and according to some in the madhab, yes, you do. So every morning, so if you miss, you forget, and you go to bed, and you wake up, that day doesn't count. That's according to some.
That's if you go that route.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the popular opinion in the madhab is that your intention for the entire month is sufficient, unless you have a circumstance that interrupts your fast. So we're going to talk about circumstances that may interrupt the fasting of the month of Ramadan. And circumstances can either be physical or circumstantial. So if you have something physical as an illness or a circumstance such as a woman in her cycle, that's a circumstance.
Or traveling.
Or see, now traveling, that's another issue. The traveling is another issue because there's ikhtilaf with regards to traveling.
All right.
Okay, so go ahead.
So we're good. We're good on that. Right?
Before we go, I want to say this because I did mention Islam and fasting, and I'll just jump right in here with regards to the obligation of the fast being on the entirety of humanity. The same way the obligation of Salah is on the entirety of humanity, because the entirety of humanity is supposed to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, worship His creator. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala legislated the fast, the entirety of humanity is supposed to comply. The acceptance of the fast requires Islam. In order for your fast to be accepted, you have to submit. If you haven't submitted, your fast means absolutely nothing. You just went hungry. How many of you did I lose? The acceptance of your fast requires Islam. So you have to be Muslim in order for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to consider your fast. So for those of us who invite our non-Muslim friends, neighbors, etc., to fast along with us, okay? And I'm sure, that's become a thing. And you know, if somebody says that volunteers say, you know, I want to fast with the Muslims, you want to fast? Hey, alhamdulillah. That's a means of da'wah. That's, you know, a wonderful thing. Legally, though, can a person, when you look at the prerequisites for, let me rephrase that because I don't want to use the term prerequisite, which would imply that in order for, no, it is a prerequisite. The prerequisite for Islam, for fasting is Islam. The same way the prerequisite for Salah is Islam. If a person's going through the motion, but I don't believe in Allah, but I'm making Salah. I don't believe in Allah, but I'm fasting. Allah's not going to accept that from you. That's what I went by, but the obligation of the fast is not lifted. So the person that did not comply with the directive on the day of judgment will be asked about, why did you fast Ramadan? You heard about Ramadan. You knew when Muslims were, you knew that, you know, fasting was an obligation. You're standing before your Lord. You will be questioned about that. The same way you will be questioned about Salah. There's a single standard, which is Allah's standard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Rabbul Alameen. He's the Lord of all creation. He's not the Lord of the Muslims. He's the Lord, Rabbul Alameen. What does he say in Al-Fatiha? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. He's Rabbul Alameen. He's the Lord of all creation. So if you did not submit, you're still going to be asked about Salah. You're still going to be asked about fasting. You're still going to be asked about zakah. You're going to be asked about all of these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated. Because that's Allah's standard. What we have to get out of the habit of doing is making a mockery of our faith. Stop making a mockery of our faith. No, we can't pray together. You can't join my ranks. You can't stand next to me in Salah. You can't do that. Now, whatever it is you want to do on the side, I can't stop you from doing that. But you're not going to stand between me and my Muslim brother. You can't. We don't. That's not how we do. And if you call yourself supporting me and you want to fast, do your thing, man. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to give you the impression that somehow there's some type of spiritual reward for you in engaging in, and you haven't even submitted yourself. So there is a basic and a foundational principle in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi wa huwa muhsinun. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ. Right? Let me tell you exactly where this verse is. And I want you to read the translation of the verse. So this is Surah Al-Baqarah. And the verse is verse 112. بَلَا مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجْهَهُ لِلَّهِ وهو محسن فله أجره عند ربه ولا 112 Surah Al-Baqarah. Read the translation.
Indeed, those who submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and act righteously shall be rewarded by their Lord.
Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to all, see, when people try to make Islam this, right? Islam isn't this. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bala man aslam, the standard is you submitting yourself to Allah. You submit yourself to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. However that looks, that's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your charge, you submit yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ. You can't submit yourself and then be a tyrant, right? Can't submit yourself and be a foul-mouthed, you can't do that. Because even if you say you submitted yourself, you haven't submitted yourself, because ihsan goes with Islam. Okay. Oh, they go together. When he says وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ here, this is a reference to character. You have to at least try to be a decent human being.
And the sand is.
You have to try to be a decent human being. There is no Islam without you trying to be a decent person. Because all that other stuff is meaningless if you're not even decent. None of that, all that other stuff has no meaning, carries no weight.
That's the obligation of all humanity.
All of humanity. You submit yourself and you strive to be decent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises you his reward.
You said Ihsan goes with
Islam.
Okay.
And Iman.
And Iman. Right. All right.
So in the middle of the page, right after where it says, he stated it suffices one to make the intention during the first night, because the intention is then binding to the fast for the remainder of the month, except for the traveler, the menstruating woman, and the sick person. So now we are continuing. If one of them breaks their fast with the excuse of travel, illness, or menstruation, and then they want to fast, their previous intention to fast the month at the beginning will not suffice. Instead, they must make a new intention for the remainder of the month. We've covered this already.
Okay, before you go any further, I need to state that there's ikhtilaf with regards to if a person, travel, if a person, right, fasting during the day of Ramadan, and they decide to travel, right? The question is, do I break my fast while I'm traveling?
Is it optional?
Some say it's optional. Al-Imam Ali, radiallahu anhu, said no. Al-Imam Ali, radiallahu anhu, said that if a person is fasting during the day and they decide or they have to travel, they must complete their fast.
Okay.
And what did he use as proof of that? The very same verse that we started this class with. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصم. Whosoever amongst you witnesses, he used that to say that doesn't exempt you. So if you were present, Ramadan came in, and it's fasting time, you're supposed to be fasting. Now you have others that have disagreed with this position. Meaning that, let's say, hypothetically speaking, I'm supposed to travel to Cleveland tomorrow, right? Tomorrow comes, it's Ramadan. I wake up, I'm not going to fast because I'm traveling. I can't do that.
Suppose it's for work. Is it whether it's work or pleasure? Does that have any bearing on this?
Well, work or pleasure. Yes, you got to fast if you're going to Hawaii. That's you don't get a break for that. You get a break for a necessary travel. Hawaii is not a necessary travel unless you live in Hawaii. So going back to those who disagreed with Imam Ali, right? And actually, this is one of the positions in the madhab of Imam Malik, that if the day comes, so say I'm traveling to Cleveland, day comes, it's Ramadan, and I can't break my fast. I have to fast that day. Now, if I'm still traveling the day after, I can break my fast. But that day, I have to fast because Ramadan came, and I witnessed that Ramadan came, and I'm obligated and bound by the arrival of Ramadan. Therefore, I must fast.
So clarification of this position. So this position is only if I'm already traveling, if I'm already in the state of travel, then I don't have to fast.
Now, if I'm already in the state of travel, then I do not have to fast. But if you are present when Ramadan arrives, meaning that you are a resident at the time, not a traveler, then you have to fast, even if you're traveling during your fast.
So this is, you're saying that this is the opinion of Imam
That's
Ali.
that's the opinion of Imam Ali. And those who disagreed with that position, they disagree with it because there's several reports where the Prophet ﷺ was traveling and people complained about the hardship of travel, and he broke his fast in front of them to demonstrate the ease to them. All right? What Imam Ali was saying was not contradicting that. So them traveling 1400 years ago, you're not traveling from Mecca and Medina to Medina in 24 hours. That's not happening. That's not happening. So to look at it that way, you can't look at it that way. So there's no conflict between what Imam Ali was saying and what the others were saying. Furthermore, I would argue that Imam Ali, radiallahu anhu, which was probably one of the closest people to the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would know that he saw the Messenger, what other people saw, he saw as well. Because wherever Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went, Ali ibn Abi Talib went. Continue.
All right. So we'll just continue with any type of continuous fast, such as the fast. So any type of fast, right? Expiation for divorce oath, or for murder, or for the expiation of deliberately breaking the fast in Ramadan, or fasting a month or consecutive days as a vow. All of these, one intention will suffice. So any continuous fast, no matter what type of fast it is, the intention prior to dawn of the first day of that continuous fast will suffice. Will suffice in all the cases. Similar to this case is the case of the person who observes a routine fast, like the weekly Monday or Thursday fast, or anything similar to this. The summation of his position is that if the fast is not obligatory, it is not valid to observe it without making an intention before it at night. Meaning, so if I'm doing Monday and Thursday, and my intention is to do Monday and Thursday, I can just make the intention at the start of the week to do Monday and Thursday, and that will suffice. The next week, I do the same thing.
Okay.
All right? I make the intention to fast Monday and Thursday of this period. That will suffice. The next week is a new week, a new period. I make the same intention. Yeah. If I'm doing the days in the middle of the month, I make the intention at the start. I fast the days. The next month comes around, I make that intention again, right? So outside of the period, I always renew my intention. And that's basically what this is saying here. Or if something breaks that continuity, then I renew my intention. Again? If the fast is of a kind that must be observed in this video. I don't get the context for that. So if the fast is of the kind that must be observed during a specific period, but the person is observing it before its due time or upon its due time, then they may fast and they do not have to make the intention at night. I'm just trying to get an example or context for this.
I believe that's in reference to the type of fast where a person promised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he was going to fast a particular day.
Okay, gotcha.
A particular series of days.
Okay, so if they make a promise, so an example is if they make a promise to Allah that they're going to fast a particular day or particular series of days, then they may fast and they do not have to make the intention at night. That's
yes.
Okay.
So that doesn't apply to the one about expiation for oaths and stuff that you break? That doesn't,
It sounds like it's something different.
Yes.
it does or doesn't?
An expiation
Yeah,
for an
for
oath.
oath, like you vowed you was gonna do something you couldn't.
No,
do.
that is the same thing.
Okay.
So that's a promissory
Right.
fast. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets something happen, then I promise that I'm gonna fast a week, for example, or 3 days, or a day, which is something that's not recommended that you do. But when people are desperate, they say stuff. But when you say that type of stuff, you're bound by it, which means that you absolutely have to fulfill that. And that's referred to as never. Go ahead.
So on the safe side, a summary of the position of the school, making the intention the night before is the same, whether for a voluntary or obligatory fast, according to the school. So basically the mature opinion, the summary opinion is that you make the intention the night before, whether it's a fast that's mandatory or not. You do that, and that is the accepted position of the school. This is based on what was mentioned before, concerning the original position of the school, the position of Malik's companions, as well as the people of Medina. And that's why we mentioned the amal of the people of Medina, because this is one of the sources of it here. Those who believe that it's imperative to make the intention nightly, whether traveling or not. This position has been attributed to Malik as well. His position regarding the unconscious person authenticates this narration from him, and the first is the summation of his position. Whoever intends for its fast during Ramadan to be voluntary will not be sufficed. In other words, his fast will not be valid whether he's traveling or not. What's that? I didn't get to read this. Oh, okay, I got you. So this means here that your fast for Ramadan cannot be a voluntary, and correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, fast for Ramadan is not a voluntary fast, it's an obligatory fast. So you cannot make the intention to have a voluntary fast whether you're traveling or not, right? We cannot supersede the obligatory with something that we want to volunteer to do. There's no option in that for the month of Ramadan. That's the understanding here, right? Comparable to this is if a person intends to fulfill his fast for a previously made vow, this vow will not take the place of Ramadan, nor will this fulfill his vow. So this goes back to something that we call double dipping here, right? I cannot use Ramadan, the obligatory fast of Ramadan, to fulfill a vow that I made before. So for example, I promise Allah that I'm going to fast 2 days or 3 days. Let's use 3 days, right? I promise Allah that I'm going to fast 3 days if He gives me a job. I get the job, Ramadan comes. I'm like, oh, wonderful. I can fast Ramadan and get my 3 days in. It can't work like that, right? So if Ramadan starts, if I get the job and Ramadan starts the day after, I finish Ramadan, and then after Ramadan, I still owe Allah for what I promised Allah, for what He would do. Cool? So we can't mix intention, basically. Right? Yeah, we can't mix intention. Go ahead.
Now, what about the 6 days that would come up for Shawwal? I mean, if you owe days, that'll be outside.
No, it doesn't come. Same thing, right? So we can't. So if I'm fasting 6 days of Shawwal after the end of Ramadan, and I owe days for Ramadan, both of them cannot coincide. So if I owe 2 days and I intend to fast the 6 days of Shawwal, then I'm fasting 8 days in all, right? The 2 days that I owe plus the 6 days of Shawwal.
Not only that,
Go ahead.
you have to make up your days before you can engage in
That was my
the
next question.
Sunnah fast.
So what is owed to Allah must be done before what we choose to do as part of the Sunnah.
Because if you expire, you still owe those days. Those days don't go away simply because you passed away. So you still owe those days, and it's on your inheritors to resolve that for you.
Or during the fast?
Now, so say a person missed days during Ramadan, right? And they had an opportunity to make up those days. And for whatever reason, they didn't get to make up those days and they expired.
They die.
right? They have to, their inheritors, family, they got to figure that out.
Okay, so they can.
Now, according to Imam Malik, there is no fasting on behalf of anybody else. So you have to pay the kafara, the expiation, for every day missed. That's the best you can do for them. But according to the Malikiyah, you are not allowed to pray for anyone. When I say pray, pray instead of anyone, nor are you allowed to fast instead of anyone.
So
That's Imam Malik's opinion. That's his position, that you're not allowed to do that.
Are we good? So let's say you know somebody who has missed Dhuhr and Asr, we cannot make that salah for them.
As a matter of fact, the salah thing, there's ijma' on that.
Okay.
Everybody's in agreement with that. Somebody missed salah, didn't make salah, you can't come, and they passed away, you can't make up the salah for them. That's not, that you can't do. They missed the salah, they missed the salah, oh well. That's on them.
And it's this that we want to also talk about when, so let's say, so I'm jumping ahead a bit, but let's say we are praying Tarawih, right? During the month of Ramadan. And you have not prayed Isha, and you come in. And Isha prayer is, and Tarawih is being prayed. And you still owe Isha, right? The practice is that you should pray your Isha before you jump into Tarawih. Why? You owe Isha. Isha is mandatory upon you. You owe your Isha, you pray your Isha prayer, and then you join the ranks of the Tarawih prayer.
And the other issue with that, not only putting the Sunnah before the wajib, the voluntary before the obligatory. The other issue is that your intention has to align with the imam's intention. So that if the imam is praying one salah, you can't come in with a different niyyah, and that's no. He's the imam. You have to do what he's doing. So if he's praying Tarawih, you gonna pray Tarawih or you're not praying. You can't come in and well, let me get in on this. Let me pray my Isha and trying thinking that you're getting the reward of praying in congregation, which you're not. You're not, because the imam is doing one thing and you're doing something totally different. So your intentions have to be aligned. So if the imam is praying Isha, then you join. If the imam is praying Asr, and you haven't prayed Dhuhr, you can't come in and join the ranks and, the imam is praying one salah and you're praying something else. You can't do that. Well, I missed Dhuhr, so let me get in and, nor can you make Asr before you make Dhuhr. So if you miss Dhuhr, they're praying Asr, I come in, they're praying Asr, let me pray Asr. No, you can't do that because you didn't pray Dhuhr first.
Question real quick.
Yes.
Is there a Matthias that said that you can, because this is some new thing that's coming about now?
That says that you can what?
That you can pray the if you walk in, because this happened to me. This happened to me. I went to a masjid, they called the Iqamah for Asr. And I said, well, I gotta make Zohar. So I'm gonna go make Zohar. He said, no, you can't make Zohar. You have to make Asr with us. I said, no, I gotta make the prayer that I missed first before I can make the Asr. And so you're saying the same thing. Is that your question?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I mean, this is
just no.
I'm saying no, not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. I don't know what that's all about. First of all, Salatul Jama'ah, the congregational prayer, is voluntary. When I say it's voluntary, meaning it's Sunnah. I'm not obligated to pray in Jama'ah. What I'm obligated to do is pray. I'm not obligated to pray in Jama'ah. So for someone to tell me that I have to pray, but I don't have to pray with you. Maybe I don't want to pray with you. And if I don't want to pray with you, that's my prerogative. I don't have to pray with you. I don't have to pray with you. You may mishear this or take the wrong. You don't have to pray in the masjid. You don't have to pray in the masjid. You are not obligated to pray in let me rephrase that. In a madhab, and it's a single madhab, praying in the masjid is obligatory. And that's in the madhab of Imam Ahmad. Other than that, you don't have to pray in the masjid. So now, as far as the order of the prayers, there isn't a single madhab that says that you can leap over salahs. You missed salah, right? You can't do that. Now, the only way.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, what were you about?
I was about to say that the only way, the only time that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Shane, the only time that, so let's say you miss Dhuhr and Asr is about to go out.
Yes. If Asr is about, the time for Asr is about to expire, right? Or the time for any salah is about to expire and you've already missed
the previous
salah, then you make at least what you want to do is get that salah in on time. That's the only time you can do that.
I don't understand it.
So let's say you walk in the masjid, right? Let's say it's 5 minutes before Maghrib. Walk in the masjid, or you're home. Forget the masjid. You're home, right? You haven't prayed Dhuhr. Asr is about to expire. What do? You pray Asr first, because then you'll get the reward for praying out. You'll be in compliance, because praying salah on time is mandatory. That's wajib. See, because once you miss the time, then you're already in violation. So you don't want to be in violation for 2 salahs. So you get the 1 salah in during that assigned time, then you make up because you're making up that salah anyway. But if you at the beginning of time, you can't do that. As long as you have enough time, you have to maintain the order. So if you walk into the masjid, you haven't prayed Dhuhr, and it's time for Asr, and the brothers are lined up, you make your Dhuhr, and if Allah wills, you'll be able to join the Jama'ah. Otherwise, it's not in the cards for you that day.
Whether they hit us with the old black people, you can't do this.
So then you do the best you can, right? So you do the best you can, right? And if this thing is going to turn into an all-out brawl in the masjid, then you do the best you can to minimize whatever fitna will emerge from that.
I have one other question wrapping this up. So is there a madhab that says that if I miss Dhuhr and Asr is in, that I can't make Dhuhr? Because this is another one of the new things that they're saying now.
I'm sorry. If you miss Dhuhr and Asr is in, that's it. You've lost your opportunity to make Salatul Dhuhr. That's insanity.
Yes.
That's insanity, because you are still held accountable for every salah you missed. I don't care if it was 15 years ago, if it was 30 years ago. If you owe Salatul Dhuhr from 30 years ago, you best figure out how to pray that Salatul Dhuhr. There is no such thing as, time expired. Oh, well, I guess I won't make that one. That's insane.
Right, because what they're saying is that while I wasn't asleep, I didn't forget, and I didn't get in the time.
So you just take your punishment, basically. MashaAllah. Where's the compassion? Where's the rahmah in that?
Not in Philadelphia.
Well, fortunately, Islam is not based on Philadelphia.
Oh, man.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
So I think we are about to approach a break. 1 second. All right, so I'm just going to finish this paragraph, and then we're going to take this break, right? Just to wrap up this point. So we're just going to go into something else when we get back from the break. So the same thing that we've been saying. Comparable to this is if a person intends to fulfill his fast for a previous vow, this will not take the place of Ramadan, nor will it fulfill his vow. Additionally, it is not permissible to perform any other type of fast during Ramadan. We discussed that. If a person has days to make up from a previous Ramadan and he did not make them up until the next Ramadan, and he intends for the current to make up for the previous, in this case, there are 3 positions attributed to Imam Malik, that the current fast will make up for the previous fast, and he must make up the current days missed, that the current fast stands, and he must make up for the previous days missed, that it does not suffice for either and he must perform expiation of feeding if he intentionally missed the days. It has also been stated that he should offer expiation by feeding 60 needy people because the situation is comparable to a person who intentionally broke their fast. Meaning this, so you had days to make up, you had the time and the opportunity to make up those days. The next Ramadan comes upon you, you have not made up those days, then any of these three positions are the positions that he says. So if you are fasting now in Ramadan, that Ramadan will not count for the previous one is one position, or it will count and you still have to make up, right? Or this is this Ramadan and you make up for the past Ramadan, or the third one is, it does not suffice for either, and the expiation of feeding if you intentionally miss the days, right? So you then feed for the days that you missed. And in addition to that, it is also suggested that you should offer the expiation by feeding 60 people because your situation was that you intentionally chose not to fast for those days that you missed. All right, so that's another part of this opinion, that by choosing not to make up your days before the start of the following Ramadan is an intentional act that carries with it a kafara. And in this case, is it 60 days for each day, or is it just 60 days in total?
No, for each day.
Right. So I was just clarifying, and this would be, so let's say I owed 3 days, I'm feeding 60 people per day, right, for each day that I miss. So because we have to keep in mind, each day, although we are making the intention for the entire month, each day is its own violation, right? So if I miss a certain day, that's a violation. If I miss another day, if I chose to fast not to fast another day, that is another violation. Each day that I choose not to fast in the month of Ramadan, it's a violation in itself. So I owe kafara for each day that I choose to violate. And we'll come down to what the different forms of make up for choosing to violate the fast will be, right? There are different things that we can do, and we'll discuss that, if not today, then tomorrow. So I think at this point in time, it's important to take a break. I have 3:09. Let's come back at 3:15, inshallah.
Ish.
Yeah, we'll push for around that time.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, so come back at 3:15, inshallah.
It's 3:09.
3:10 now, yeah.
3:10, so you get 5 minutes.
5 minutes break.
Really?
What's that?
5 minutes. Stretch your legs. Stretch your legs. 5 minutes.
Yes.
Just put it in.
Okay. That's something.
All right, I'm gonna grab a deal and then I'll come right
Okay, that's good.
But that's the new jump. So, yeah.
Oh, October. 5 minutes fit class. Every Thursday.
Yeah, but that's for witnessing. That's for witnessing business contracts. That's not in the case of. That is a question for him. No, when I read it, I paused.
You know, I see it.
To give people a chance. Nobody objected.
No, I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to. No, I
No, I definitely hear you on that. So, no, yeah, it's a good question.
doing an excellent job. Appreciate it, man. Seriously. You know what I mean? Yeah. You can go, you in college, we can go to college and get a class, man, and say, you ain't getting none out of that job. You had to take
You have to dig it, right?
So don't hurt back on the weekend now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Wait, let me say what you need to do. Don't miss those days, man. 60 needy people. Per day. Yeah. No, but if you're sick, you're not healthy and you're trying to trip. What you do now? Okay. It should be self-supporting. Give it to, if you can, lean on people. Whoever pays the type of call to he said, don't have to electrical, electronics, well, I mean, they get them in young and get them
And you know, like green, I'm going straight, they turn, but you see it, right?
We don't know that. You go to most of those guys that are I wasn't even, they was on the apprenticeship. The thing is not, and I have our China, and the thing is, well, place with just the Indians or the Chinese, everybody knows that's why they shoot us all. Y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all still sleeping.
The link?
Yeah, let's make it. What's that? You can go right back and get built. And then you can stand in the rain. The main product. Okay. Over that. Oh, yeah. I was thinking about that. You can't. Nah, man, y'all gotta stop it. Yeah. But it was about focus. Everything. We took care of things. I came out alone, whatever. Most of them gave just something they made.
That's why I asked them
They put their feet out, they lay on it, then they go after night.
You know what I mean?
You go down there, before you got married, before the man got married, you sit outside. This is what y'all doing and take it and sit down, you can go see it. You see, this is
So if you know 5 or 6, but you know it's 5 or 6, and you're 5.
Before, I don't think ever say thank God. Jesus Christ. Our knowledge.
So we taking more than 5 minutes.
Bring it back and say, well, how do you say that? Children in their green. Jamila. He said, what? You said, only one person. You call me by my name. My name. But I mean, I changed my grandma. She said, I don't want to say that. She said, you call me. You know, you got your parents, man. You know, you cannot you gotta respect your parents, man. You say all that grandma, man. You know what I mean? Grandma said. It was like, oh, man, that ain't the look. If you tell me I gotta cut my grandma, I can't do it. Listen. Right. Yeah.
All right, Bismillah, I think we should go ahead and start back. Just in the interest of time.
Oh, don't worry about it.
All right, so the last thing we said was that, so resuming,
60 people per day.
right, 60 people. So I just want to put this back into context, right? If we have days to make up from a previous Ramadan, and we didn't make it up until the next Ramadan, and you intend to make it up from the previous Ramadan, then there are three positions. The acceptable or the encouraged position is to make up your fast. So let's say the second Ramadan is upon you, and you didn't make up from the previous Ramadan, you still owe those days, right? You still owe those days. So after this, don't double count it. The position that we prefer is that after this Ramadan is over, you make up the days that you owe, right? You make up the days from the previous Ramadan. If you choose to fast for each day that you missed, that's also an acceptable thing as well, right? Fast and do the feeding, right? That's also an acceptable position. But at least minimally, if you can fast, you should fast for whatever days that you owe. Right, so that's what that is. The third one here, the third point, it has also been stated that he should offer expiation by feeding 60 needy people because his situation is comparable to the person who intentionally broke their fast. So although this is a position that is according to Imam Malik, some argue that this position has attributed to some of Malik's companions, but it is a position that has no precedent and therefore has no basis. So those who also advocate for this, some argue that it is a position that isn't validated in the madhab. So this goes back to what we said before, right? You will see things that seemingly contradict each other inside of the reading. Whatever position you adopt, you're fine with it because some argue that it's valid and some argue that it isn't. And I've told you what is the recommended position from Cuba itself.
What is, you mean as far as the feeding people?
As far as if you owe days from a previous Ramadan
and
the new Ramadan is upon you. As for the hostage who gets confused about the months, so let's say somebody's incarcerated or hostage, so they don't have their freedom, interpreted as that. If it is revealed to him that he has fasted Ramadan and he intended to do so, and his fast coincides with the month of Ramadan, then it suffices for him. However, if he fasts before or after the month, it will not suffice for him, meaning that our fast of Ramadan must coincide with the time of Ramadan. So if I don't have my freedom, let's say I can't see the light and stuff like that, and I don't know, right? But somebody tells me, hey, Ramadan starts today, and I start fasting, and I go through all the motions of fasting, and then they tell me when Ramadan ends, and I end my fast, and then it becomes clear to me that that time was correct, then fine, no problem. I move on as normal. But if after I have done that, and it becomes clear to me that I fasted outside of the time of Ramadan, then I need to make up those days because I didn't fast the month of Ramadan. That's according to what is stated here.
What if you,
One and then two. Down.
What if you do the 30 days, like you start late because somebody told you that it was late, and you still do 29 days.
Right, so this is slightly different, right? So this is me fasting not in Ramadan at all.
Right.
So if I have days that coincide with the fast of Ramadan, then I can count those days as valid days, but any days that fell outside the time of Ramadan, then I have to make up for those days.
So you can't count the days that after Ramadan that you fasted?
Because I didn't fast with the intention of makeup.
Okay.
Right? I fasted as though it was for Ramadan.
Okay.
So that's according to this opinion here.
Ma'am Kais, I think earlier when we first began, we mentioned that there's an exemption. So for the person that's in solitary confinement, who is a prisoner, right? They lost their freedom, all right? If they're in solitary confinement, they're only out of their cell for an hour out of the 24 hours, all right? And they don't know what day it is or anything like that. So is the obligation of fasting lifted from that person?
So lifted from that person, from what I know, it is not. And when they become aware, they have to make it up. But I'm going to wait until Imam Anas comes back and have him answer that definitively.
Because there's another, just a corollary of that is the person who is sick bedridden, a complete invalid. Invalid, right? So is the obligation of fasting lifted from him as well?
Yeah, because because those two things are different, right? One, there's a very clear, so he cannot fast.
Right.
He's unable to, so when we start speaking about and we'll come to this later, right? Those who are unable to fast, whether it be because they are traveling, they are sick, or some other type of, or they're incapacitated in some other way, there are very specific things that they can do to compensate for not being able to fast. So we'll come a bit later on to what the person who is sick can do or has to do, or people who are in charge of them can do or has to do for them. So we'll come to that in a bit. This case here is somebody who is legally required to fast, has the ability to fast, but there's something else in their circumstance that is preventing them from fasting. So the question becomes, when their circumstance changes, what do they owe for what was past? And they will still owe, right? But again, I'll wait until Imam Anas comes and have him verify that with certainty. Was there another question? Go ahead.
Okay, I'm still a little confused about the statement about three positions.
Yes.
What is valid and what is not?
All of them are valid.
All of them are valid.
All of them are valid.
Okay. Because it says it does not.
What is
when this position has attributed to some of Malik's companions, but it is a position that has no precedent.
Right. So remember, that is the author of this text who is saying that based on his analysis of what came, right? So he's looking at the evidence and he's saying, no, you know what? This position has no validity. But for it to be a position, it means that there's someone in the chain who is saying that this is an established position here. Right? So we are not, so it's not, so what we can take from this is that it's definitely not incumbent upon us to take the third position, right? We are okay and without blame if we opt not to take the third position because there is some pushback against this third position here. Does that answer the question? Yes. All right, so as for the hostage who gets confused about the months, if it is revealed to him that he has fasted Ramadan and he intended to do so, and his fast coincides with the month, then that is cool. However, if he fasts before or after it, it will not suffice for him. If this occurs for years, meaning he is in this situation for years, the fast of the first year does not suffice. If his fast coincides with Shaban of the second year, he should make up for the first. He should continue in this manner every year with his fast sufficing for him, and he must make up any missed days. If a hostage or someone like him makes intentions and uses his judgment to fast to fulfill the month of Ramadan. All right. He should continue in this manner every year with his fast sufficing for him, and he must make up any missed days if a hostage or someone like him, if a hostage or someone like him makes intentions and uses his best judgment to fast to fulfill the month of Ramadan. So meaning this, I use my best judgment, I did the best I can, some new information came to me, I realized I have days that I owe, I make up whatever days that I have missed. That's a summary of what is read here. If you're getting something else, please let me know, but that's a summary of what I'm reading.
There we go.
So, sir, as you're coming in, there's a question here that had a technical thing to it that I need to some input on. So we went over the piece about if somebody who's a hostage who gets confused about the months, right, and he fasts within the month with the right intention, it counts. But if it's before or after, then it doesn't count, and he has to make up those days. The question from Hassan, and Hassan, if I may miss your question, please let me know. The question from Hassan was, for the person who, let's say, is incarcerated in solitary confinement, does not know when Ramadan starts, no one is telling him, hey, you need to fast or anything like that. He doesn't fast at all. when he comes out of solitary confinement and he can fast, does he owe the days from the previous Ramadans that he missed? So he was incarcerated.
Yes.
He owes the days, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he owes the days.
So let's say he was in solitary for a couple of years and he missed a couple of Ramadans. He has to make up those Ramadans.
Wow.
That was the question, yes?
That was the question.
So and when you're in captivity like that, you can try to estimate. But again, that would require that a person has some knowledge of the lunar months, which we should anyway, because I mean, so much of your faith is dependent on that. So much of your faith is dependent on you being aware of the Islamic calendar. So the Islamic calendar should not only factor into our Ramadan and Eid plans or Hajj. So that's something that we should know. That's when we started the conversation about the lunar months. That's how we started the conversation today.
Yeah, but he's in solitary. He doesn't have any means
He's in
of.
solitary confinement.
Day, night, etc. So you estimate. And let's say he was off and he fasted, let's say he fasted as best he could. He fasted as best he could, and inshallah Allah would accept from him. All you can do is your best. And as long as he's doing his best, then inshallah Allah will accept him. That's all you're required to do. So if he was off, then he was off. That's like, a person is somewhere where, I don't know the direction of prayer, right? So I pray in the wrong direction once, and then I came to terms with where I was at the following day. You're not required to make up those salahs where you made salah in the wrong direction. Now, if you made salah in the wrong direction during the time of that salah you came to terms with, then you repeat. But if the time had already expired, halas, you're done. You already made salah. You fulfilled your obligations. Sister Sabria had her hand up.
Oh, so in this day and age in the city of New Jersey, the prisoners get box lunches in the morning time, and they have their breakfast, and then when they eat in the morning time, and then when they eat at night, they get bags of food for them to break fast, for them to do the fast in the morning time. It's a whole meal, even the ones in solitary confinement.
SubhanAllah.
Because if they don't get it, they can see the state of the earth.
Is that right?
There you go.
SubhanAllah.
So our condition is very different.
That's ease that's being provided. Yes.
What question?
Remember the sister asked the question, somebody back there asked the question, what was it, Joe? It was the question that we were asking, waiting for him to, Imam Madison.
That was the one by the brother,
Yeah,
right?
the prison he had.
That was it?
Yeah. The prisoners get food.
He has the other one.
No, the other one was.
Yeah. So if that's the case, if the prisoners get food, you know when morning is and you know when evening is, and you figure out the rest. But figuring out when Ramadan starts and when it ends, I mean, if you can't figure that out, you can't figure it out. You do the best you can. You estimate, and where however that happens for you, it happens for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Ghafurur Rahim.
And this is a very important question. Based on what you were telling us about that if everybody's still held accountable and only time they get credit is once they take Shahada. Okay, I was an answer. I took Shahada, and when I took it, we add Muhammad Akram Mahdi to the Shahada, which I know they were in Ghana. All those 17 years.
I'm going to stop you right now.
Okay.
Because that's not what I was talking about.
No.
The rule is in Islam, al-Islamu yajubu ma qabla. So whatever happened before Islam is forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't carry that. We're talking about a person that, I want you to imagine a person that comes to the masjid. I'm going to visit Muslims. I like Muslim people. I like Muslim people so much, I'm going to come in the masjid and pray with you. I'm supporting you, so I'm going to fast along with you. I'm not going to take my shahada though. Now, this person has had an intimate engagement with Islam.
Okay.
That person will be held accountable. Absolutely. So you had all of this engagement with Muslims. It's unless you're living under a rock somewhere in Siberia or under in a cave somewhere, you know, thousands of feet underground. Everybody knows when Ramadan is. Everybody knows what Ramadan is about, thanks to, you know, some of our brothers and their interesting behavior. That so much light has been shed on Islam that it's difficult to escape it. Everybody knows when Ramadan begins. Everybody knows when the Ramadan ends. Everybody knows what Muslims, you have non-Muslims that will educate Muslims on what they're supposed to do. That's how much they know about Islam. So they see you during the day of Ramadan eating, aren't you Muslim? Well, because they know you're not supposed to be eating. You drink it. Aren't you Muslim? Wait a minute, isn't it time for you to pray? They know when Hajj is because it's out there. There aren't any more excuses like that where, you know, I don't know, nobody ever told me, I didn't hear, you know, because it's in your face. Islam is in your face every day. Good or bad. It's in, bam, there you go.
Well, one more point. What I was going to say was, I fasted on Ramadan, so it won't count.
Again, if you have the intention of, again, see, I'm not going to discredit the movement. And there was some Islam in the Ansar movement. The same way there was some, as long as the Aqidah wasn't jacked up, like, you know, where, you know, we're worshiping some man.
Oh no, like that.
Or some man is your God now, or something like that. Some major shirk like that.
Well, he did tell us we were trying to get this building, and the brother said we were going to fast, and so we'll break it fast, and we did. That's why I took my shot.
Listen. You believe that you were doing what was required by the Sharia, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you accordingly. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. That is the rule.
Okay.
That's a foundational rule that everybody agrees with. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That's his business. It's not for me to tell you that he's not going to accept that from you. I wouldn't dare say that. Nor if anybody would tell you that, then unless they had some resounding proof, then, you know, I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about. So you don't need to worry about that.
So we're good? All right. So I want to at least cover the rules on traveling and being ill. And if we get lucky, we'll cover what invalidates the fast, but at least covering the rules before we end today. So this is on page 8. A traveler may not break his fast unless he's traveling a distance which permits for the shortening of prayer, which is? Which is? Sure. A traveler may not break his fast unless he's traveling a distance which permits for the shortening of prayer, which is?
48 miles?
No. No. So I'll just end it now. 38.
38?
Yeah, in the madhab, it's approximately 38 miles.
So this is for Maliki fiqh, but Shafi has another number.
Yes.
Right? And Imam
yes.
I know Shafi number, I think it was 18.
So yeah, so the other numbers, so the other madhahib would have other numbers. In the Maliki fiqh, we are going to go with 38.
38. And 38 miles, not from the city limit, but from your residence.
Oh, okay.
You got to be clear about that. Your residence, not city limits.
All right, the conditions related to distance have been previously mentioned in a chapter on prayer, on Salah. The same is true if he makes intentions to stay for a period of time, if he's traveling for 4 days or more. So meaning, even if he becomes, if he's going to stay in that location for over 3 days, the rule is still the same. He still has to make that minimum distance of 38 miles before the option of breaking his fast becomes permissible for him. That's what this is speaking about here. The traveler has the option to break his fast or not. if he fasts while traveling, it is okay, or it will suffice for him, meaning that breaking our fast while we travel is optional. It is not something that we have to do. And if you choose to fast, especially in our condition, it is permissible. It is preferable for him to fast if he's capable in our opinion here. It is not permissible for him to fast a voluntary fast while traveling, but break his fast during Ramadan. Meaning, so let's take the case that we had before. So we know that we are capable of fasting, but we know that Allah has given us the ease to not fast during the month of Ramadan. But in my mind, I know that I owe Allah a fast, whether it be for a vow I made or for whatever else, right? Or maybe I'm traveling on a Monday or Thursday. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take advantage of traveling, fasting Monday or Thursday. I'm in Ramadan, right? Keep it in mind, I'm in Ramadan. Or I'm traveling Monday or Thursday. Allah allows me to break my fast. So I'm not going to fast the day of Ramadan, but I'm going to fast the Monday or Thursday Sunnah fast. We can't do that. So we cannot drop the compulsory in place of the Sunnah at all, when the compulsory is still upon us. All right, so it's not permissible for him to do that. The traveler cannot break his fast until he commences his journey, and it is not permissible for anyone to make intention to break his fast the night before. So let's wrap this up with one statement. The condition for ease or the condition for the exception does not apply until the exception is upon us. Meaning that I cannot, is similar to what is very much what Imam Anna said earlier, right? I cannot not fast if I'm not traveling. So until I'm in the state where I'm traveling, until that condition is upon me, that is the time that that ease comes to me, right? So if I'm not traveling, I don't get that ease. If I'm not sick, I don't get that ease. I don't anticipate my sickness and then say, all right, you know what? I might be sick around 12 o'clock, so I'm just not going to fast today because I think I might get sick. You're with me?
Which is a good point. I'm feeling, I have a couple of sniffles. I feel a cold coming on. No, I'm feeling kind of queasy. If you vomit, then you break your fast. I'm feeling kind of queasy. That may pass. If it passes, you continue on with your fast.
Jamila.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So, if you let's say you're traveling and you are going to be, let's say, in Maryland or New York or something like that, and like 2 o'clock or something, you still get up for suhoor and everything, and once you're traveling.
Once you start your journey, you have the option of breaking your fast.
Right, and if you don't, it's okay.
Yes.
Don't break it, okay.
Yes. And we actually have some more that we'll come into that in a second, right? So again, thing to take away from this is none of the conditions that cause us to break our fast become valid until that condition applies to us. All right, so the condition has to apply to us for it to become valid. If a person chooses to fast while traveling, he must make intentions the night before. So Jamila, going back to your question, if I'm traveling to Maryland the next day, I still have to make my intention to fast the night before. If a person arises fasting and then starts his journey in the middle of the day, he may not break his fast. So if I start the day fasting, my journey starts. According to this, he may not break his fast. If he breaks his fast, then he makes up that day. And that's all he has to do. It's not considered a willful breaking of the fast where kafar has to be offered. You just make up that day because you're allowed to not fast if you're traveling. You need to clarify anything here?
No.
Okay.
I think I'm just reading it over because I hear the word is not permissible, but then you still have the option of doing it.
Yeah, so right after that, he says, if he does, then he must make up the day and nothing more. So if it was that it was haram to do it, then he wouldn't just be able to make up the day. It would have another penalty attached to it. Does that clarify it?
Yes.
Okay. And that there implies the permissibility of doing it. All right? And it has been stated, he must offer expiation as well. However, this has not been substantiated by way of tradition or reporting, meaning that if somebody chooses to take advantage of, I started my travel in the middle of the day, and then I chose not to fast at that point in time, the position here that he has to offer kafara for it, meaning that he has to either fast the consecutive number of days or feed the certain number of people. That doesn't apply here because according to this author, is not substantiated in tradition or by way of any agreement. The majority of scholars are of the opinion that he owes no expiation and must only make up the day. So it changes nothing that has been stated earlier on. The only thing he has to do, he or she has to do, is make up the day. If his fast is voluntary, then there is nothing owed. Meaning that if this was not a day of Ramadan that I'm fasting, and I just wanted to fast on Monday or Thursday, it was just a voluntary fast, and I chose to break my fast in the middle of the day, I don't have to make up that day. There is nothing owed for a voluntary fast if I choose to break it while for a valid reason, such as traveling and stuff like that. If he breaks his fast before commencing his journey because he intends to travel, he must make up the day and offer expiation. Abdul Malik ibn Majashun stated there is no expiation on him in this case either, and he mentioned that Anas did this and that Al-Hasan judged for its permissibility. So this here is the other opinion to that, right? That one says that there is no expiation, and then the other one says no, there is an expiation for it. So again, we have this this ikhtilaf in the matter. And whoever makes his intention to fast during his journey and he wakes up fasting, he is not permitted to break his fast, and if he does, he must make up the day and nothing more. This has been narrated by Ibn Abu Uwais by way of Malik. And it has been stated that he must make up the day and offer expiation. This has been reported by Ibn al-Qasim. The first position is more accurate to me and is what I adhere to, because it is originally permissible for the traveler to break his fast, and he has the option to fast, and he's excused whenever he breaks his fast. So what this author is saying is that he is partial to the idea that if I start my fast and if I start my journey in the middle of the day and I choose to break my fast, all I have to do is make up the day, and I don't have to offer any expiation or kafara. Al-Mughira and Abdul Malik both said if he breaks his fast because of sexual contact, he must offer expiation. If he breaks his fast because of eating or drinking, then he doesn't have to offer expiation.
What's the difference in the expiation between the two?
Say that again?
What's the difference between the expiation between the two, whether it's sexual contact or eating or drinking?
Well, the one says that if so, when we go to expiation in terms of how many days you have to fast, if you break your fast, and so we said feeding 60 people, right? And fasting 60 consecutive days,
two
right?
consecutive months.
Right. So fasting 60 consecutive days or feeding 60 people, that is the expiation for sexual contact referred to here.
Or deliberately breaking the fast.
So
however that looks.
So sexual contact here is being likened to deliberately breaking your fast, right? Intentional breaking of the fast. But he says here that if he breaks his fast because of eating or drinking, then he doesn't have to offer any expiation. Meaning this. This is about accidental eating and drinking.
That's
right?
accidental.
So I just wanted to make sure what I was about to say was correct. You cannot accidentally have sex with someone.
Thank you.
So that's the context here. That won't be an accidental thing. But you can accidentally eat or drink. So if you accidentally eat or drink, then you don't have to offer expiation. But if you have sex with someone, it is not accidental, that is intentional. So then the expiation becomes necessary. Fasting or feeding.
No, eating and drinking is change the day.
And there's an opinion that says you still make up that day, but we'll come to that in a second. Hassan.
There's a hadith that I've read. I don't know the shar of the imam or anything like that, but where a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, "Oh Prophet, I had sex with my wife. I broke my fast. Well, what can I do?" Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him to feed 6 people. He said, "I'm poor. I can't feed." Do you know what you know that means? So how does that that particular hadith, how does that fit with what we're reading here?
It supports it.
With the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the man said, well, I can't, I don't have any money to feed.
So, but this goes back to
With regards, this is what you need to understand with regards to the kafara or the expiation. You have choices. You have choices. So either or. So you can do this or you can do this. Actually, you have three options.
Right.
You pick one of the three. And if by chance you can't do any of the three, then that's between you and Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you accordingly. So if a person can't physically fast 2 consecutive months, right? 2 consecutive lunar months.
For each occurrence.
Okay? Which would be, possibly 58 days, or maybe 59 days, or maybe 60 days.
Right.
But it's 2 consecutive lunar months, or feeding 60 people, for 60 needy people, 60 people that qualify. They don't have to be Muslim. Okay? Or there's no more slavery, so you're not freeing a captive or a slave. So you only have 2 options. Let me rephrase that. There's slavery out there, but hopefully Muslims aren't.
So if somebody pays somebody's bond to get out of prison.
No, you can't do that. You can't pay somebody's bond to get out of jail. That doesn't work, because unless the person their bail was like $250,000 or, but now you're putting value on a human being, which put value on the person's freedom. But
necessarily that you would
really only have 2 options. You either fast or you feed. Those are your 2 options. And the feeding is a full meal, and their criterion for who you can feed. So you can't have a banquet, invite a bunch of your friends and say, I'm feeding, this is my feeding for Ramadan. You can't do that. So people have to meet the criteria of a needy individual.
Good?
I have a question.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
I would like to throw this out there for anybody who needs to feed somebody, like you say, it does not have to be a Muslim. Phil Abundance says it's $2 per meal.
$2.
$2 per meal. It wasn't $1.50, but it went up to $2 a meal. So if you got to feed 60 people, then you times $2 times 60. And send them a check.
That's a deal.
So count on long.
No, there's so much might do it in one day where you have to do it.
Yeah, so the issue, Sister Sabrina, the issue with the feeding is that there has to be effort. There has to be effort for let's say hypothetically speaking, the person that has to feed physically can't go out and do all this stuff. Now that's different. But a well-bodied, an able person has to put forth effort in feeding, which means that they ought to prepare the meal. Okay, they should put that on the person. See, a miskin generally is somebody that's not going to have the means to prepare the meal. So I ought to prepare the meal, and I ought to deliver the meal to the person. And I ought to do that for every day that I owe, not all at one time. So there has to be, that's substituting for the fasting. So I can figure that out. I can figure out maybe an hour out of my day, if that, and I can figure that out. Yes.
No, that's not the same as the kafara, right? That's not the same as after I've broken and I need to feed 60.
Yeah, even feeding 60 people. You know what I mean? Meaning feeding them all at the same time? Yeah, I guess you could do that. Right. So, yes.
Another question. In that meal, does the one that's doing it, does he have to provide that food himself too? Like you have to acquire that food? where should that food come from?
That should come from your
Other than
means.
just you preparing?
Yeah, that has to come from
Your
you.
means,
That,
yeah.
absolutely. That's an expense. That's an expense. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to retract that about this, the 60, feeding the 60 people. Because there has to be, if there is effort put into a person that has an excuse, but they have to pay a kafara. For a person, for a violator.
Right.
For a violator, you have to be made to feel that. So the same way, if I have to fast 2 consecutive months.
Right, each day, right.
If you miss a day, you gotta start over.
Yeah, I know that, yeah. Wow.
So you feed a person each day for 60 days.
You feed one person each day for 60 days.
Okay. One person each day.
One person each day for 60 days, because it's a way of you're atoning for your indiscretion, whatever that was.
So the person can still do what Sister Sabria offered, right?
No, you see, this is,
Wait a minute.
sorry.
For a person, let me jump in here right now. So say, for example, let's say hypothetically speaking, Sister Sabria has to feed, right? Sister Sabria can send Phil Abundance a check.
Yes.
Why? Because that's a hardship for Sister Sabria to do all that.
Right.
Now, so if, let's say, Abdul Malik here has to feed, Abdul Malik doesn't get a break.
Right.
Because Abdul Malik is physically able to do all of these things, and he has to put forth that effort. Yes.
I think the question I was asking is that the person at the Malik, he can take his $2 every day for 60 days down to Phil Abundance to feed one.
No,
he can't. That's not for him.
For Abdul Malik should put forth the effort to go to the supermarket, shop for the ingredients, prepare the meal, or have someone in his home prepare the meal, or Abdul Malik may want to go and buy a ready-made meal.
Right.
But he has to go and purchase the meal. Modern convenience, you're not going to order Uber Eats for a meal or Grubhub or something like that. But again, if you did that, you had it delivered to yourself, and you took that, you can do that as well.
I think, Hazan, what we want to keep in mind is that you have violated something, right? Or there's something that we are supposed to do, and you have not done it. So you take the most effort that you can make, and then you go down the pecking order from there. So if this is too much for me, I really cannot do this, then what's the next best thing that I can do? If I cannot do that, then I move down the ladder. So the more I'm able to do is the more that I should do to compensate for what the obligation was that I could not fulfill.
Do the best you can.
So now the expiation for someone who is unable to, right? That is not punitive.
Right.
Whereas the other is. So the other, absolutely, you have to put forth the effort.
Okay.
Because you violated, whereas the person who is unable, for whatever reason.
I think that's what I was thinking
Yeah.
about. I wasn't thinking on the punitive end. I was thinking about the person who's actually unable.
But even the person that's unable, if you are physically fit and able to do this, let's say you have a condition that you can't fast, right? But the condition does not prevent you from putting forth other efforts. You want to maximize, it's Ramadan, maximize the reward. That's part of Ramadan is you pushing yourself. Not pushing the button on your cell phone. On the app, you push the button, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. I mean, we got all this stuff. All you got to do is tap, 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 and you're done. But is that really what you want to do? How is that? See, fasting is training the soul. How is you pushing a button training the soul? So when you have to go outside of yourself, right? You have to experience some discomfort and some hardship where, I'm going to go out here and do this. I'm going to go shopping for this stuff. Shopping may not be your thing. You may hate shopping. You may hate supermarkets. But guess what? it's Ramadan, I'm going to the supermarket. And I'm going to pick that, I'm going to go through all this tedious process of preparing this because I'm in pursuit of. Figure it out. So if you can do that, you ought to do that. If you can't, then you should, again, there's ease.
And from my position, thank Allah for this option, because if I didn't have to go to the supermarket, get the food, cook the food, and then drive downtown or drive wherever to go find someone, it would be like I was cheating. You know what I mean? It's just much more fulfilling for me personally.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just go a bit longer, right? I know we've hit 4 o'clock. I'll just go a bit longer, and then we'll look to wrap up, inshallah. The sick person should not break his fast unless he encounters hardship. So basically, once the condition is there, that's when you start taking the ease. And there is no definitive way of determining that, and Allah knows best. What does this mean? I'm the only one who knows how sick I am, right? So if I know that my illness right now is way too difficult for me to fast, then my choice to break my fast in this moment is my choice between me and Allah. My level of tolerance may not be your level of tolerance. You may look at me and say, no, you could go longer than that. And no, I can't. That's between me and Allah. You might say, you know what? No, I'm going to go all the way until I know I'm about to pass out. And then I'll break my fast. I might say, no, going that distance is a bit too difficult for me. I really feel right now like this is my limit, and I choose to break my fast. And then this is between me and Allah. All this is saying here is that each person's limit is only they can determine that. Right? And we have to be honest as to what that limit is. Everyone is excused from fasting with a proper excuse, and if a sick person endures and fasts during a period when he's permitted to break his fast, it is okay, it will suffice for him. And whoever has days missed from Ramadan due to illness or travel, which he has neglected to make up until the next Ramadan, and he is capable of making up the days, if he happens to break his fast during the days of the current month, and he must also feed in the amount of the mud, the handful, he must also feed in the handful of the mud, right? So this here says, and I'll repeat this, and whoever has days missed from the previous Ramadan due to illness or travel, which he did not make up, and the new Ramadan has started, and he was capable of doing up, of making it up, if he breaks his fast during the days of the current month, he must also feed in the amount of 1 mud.
And a mud is basically a handful of food.
Is everyone clear on that?
So that's the measurement. And so again, you're talking about methods that were used when you didn't have modern tools. So a mud is a handful like this. Both hands cupped. This is a mud.
Right, so all this is saying is basically how much if you break your fast, if you cannot fast because you're ill or traveling, this is how you compensate for that. If he dies before he's able,
yeah. So I don't want you to misunderstand. So we don't do that anymore. Okay. So we don't do a handful of barley. We don't do that. So that's substituted with whatever it is that we eat nowadays. So whatever your diet consists of, you're not gonna, please don't give you're feeding somebody, so I'm gonna give them a handful of dates. That's an insult. Because that's not what you would eat. You wouldn't eat a handful of dates. That's not your meal. We know what a meal it constitutes, so you do the meal. Yes.
If he dies before he's able to make up the days, it is encourageable for his heirs to feed on his behalf if he neglects to express it in his will, but it will not be incumbent upon them to do so, but it is wajib for him to do so. So this is what was said earlier on.
Yeah, so it's wajib, it's obligatory for him to put in his will that he has days to make up, and that part of his inheritance has to be designated for feeding. If
he is exempted because of illness or travel, and is not able to fast until the next Ramadan, there is nothing incumbent upon him. The fast that is for a vow or something similar does not need to be made up whether the deceased is his wali or not. Meaning that if it's just for a vow, this doesn't have to be made up by the heirs. Right? It is better to make up missed days consecutively, in our opinion, but if he spreads them out, it will suffice for him. Meaning, have days to make up, we don't have to make them up day after day. We can skip days if necessary. Having a wet dream does not invalidate the fast, but menstruation does. If you fall asleep, you have a wet dream, you wake up, you make ghusl, and you continue fasting. If a woman has a period during the day of the fast, it invalidates her fast, and she must make up that day. If a person arises from their sleep in a state of ritual impurity during Ramadan, or if a woman wakes up and the period ended during the night, and in both of these cases, the intention was made to fast for the day, they perform the ritual washing. There is no harm in doing this according to Malik and Ibn al-Qasim. Abdul Malik stated, if a woman completes a period before dawn and she delays her ghusl until after dawn comes in, then her day is considered a day of fitr, meaning it wouldn't count as a day of fasting because she is impure during the part of the day, and she is not like the person who wakes up in a state of ritual impurity, janaba, because ritual impurity does not nullify the fast while menstruation does.
And that is not the popular opinion in the madhab.
So let's just clarify this here, right? What this is saying here is that if a woman's cycle ends before Fajr and she delays her ghusl until after Fajr, that day is not a valid day for her. That's what this is saying here. The opinion in the madhab and the opinion that we follow is that if a woman's cycle ends before Fajr and she delays her ghusl until after Fajr, but she doesn't eat or anything like that, right? Her cycle ended before Fajr, she delays her ghusl until after Fajr, her fasting day is still a valid fasting day. Are we good? Mm-hmm. So that's the opinion we good. Questions on this? All right, and I know there's something about praying Fajr inside of there that we can address if necessary. She completes it, she delays ghusl, okay. Abu Faraj mentions this in his book according to Abdul Malik. He then said, Muhammad ibn Maslama said, if a woman delays performing the ritual cleansing until dawn actually comes in, she should fast that day. Ibn al-Jalab mentioned by way of Abdul Malik, if she becomes pure before dawn and she has time to perform ghusl but neglects to do so and instead delays it until she awakes, then this does not harm her, similar to the person in a state of ritual impurity. If she awakes and there is a small window of time which does not allow her to perform the ghusl, her fast is not valid. Muhammad ibn Maslama said in this case, she should fast and make up the day. Ibn al-Jalab mentioned something similar to this and attributed it to them. The correct position in this situation is what Malik and Ibn al-Qasim stated, and is the position held by majority of the scholars. We good? Mm-hmm. Malik stated if a woman becomes pure during the night in Ramadan and she is not sure that it was before dawn or not, she should fast and make up the day. A bleeding woman who is experiencing mustahaba should not break a fast except during the days that she is exempted from praying normally. The menstruating woman should make up her fast and not her prayer. Right. So if a woman is in a state of mustahaba, what basically this means is that her cycle, she has an irregular cycle or regular bleeding, right? So in this case here, she has bleeding for, and in the madhab, 15 days. Yes, you go with 15? Yes. So she's bled for 15 days, but after the 15th day, she continues bleeding. Once she has bled past 15 days, the rest of that, the first 15 days, is considered cycle menstruation. She does not fast, she does not pray. But after the 15th day, it's considered mustahaba, and now she has to pray and she has to fast.
Even if she's still bleeding.
Even if she's still bleeding.
Is that,
Let me just
No,
take
go
from Sabria and I'll come back to you. Sabria, go ahead.
Me? Oh, I didn't have anything to say.
Sahar. Oh, I am messing Sabria. Sahar.
If that's the case, then isn't the condition that you have to make wudu before each salah?
Yes, so, right. So in the case of making salah, the woman would make istinja and make wudu before each salah. Yes. That is correct. That is the practice.
so the difference is because it's not actually considered dementia, and it doesn't factor in that it is blood or bleeding.
Mm-mm. So there's a specific ruling for this in the fiqh that if the bleeding extends over a certain period of time,
Right.
she enters a state of exception, and now she continues to perform certain acts that she could not have performed
She
before.
can read the Quran, touch the Quran, and everything that she normally would do.
All right, so I'm going to read just a couple more lines and then we'll stop. Similar to the Shari woman comes to right. So if a traveler returns from his journey and finds his wife in a state of purity, he may have intercourse with her if he chooses. Whoever cannot fast due to age should not fast, and instead they should feed a needy person every day. What we spoke about, right? What is common? Thank you very much. What is common in your locale? All right. So whatever is that common feeding, that's what you do. If this is the ordinary staple, if it is not, then he should feed the person from what is considered his normal staple, as long as it is a mud measurement. This, according to Malik, is preferable and to others obligatory, meaning that you cannot feed somebody less than what is the normal thing in your locale. So if a mud is less than what is normal in your locale, you cannot feed them less than that, right? You cannot feed them less than what is in your locale. I want to go back to if a traveler returns from his journey and finds his wife in a state of purity, he may have intercourse with her if he chooses. If this is not real. This is in Ramadan, right? Unless I missed it. What's the context for this here? So similar to this, the man should know woman who completes a prayer journey beyond dawn. If a traveler returns from his journey and finds his wife in a state of purity, he may have intercourse with her if he chooses.
Yeah.
We need to clarify this. Just get some context around this here.
Let's pass that and
Move on.
I'll
Okay.
come back to that.
But yeah, I got to where I wanted to stop for today.
Oh, so we'll come back to that tomorrow.
Okay. All right. So I'm stopping at the middle of page 10. Tomorrow we'll start up with the pregnant woman, right? And just for the sake of what's coming next, somebody who's pregnant or breastfeeding, they're treated the same way as somebody who is ill, right? They feed someone for.
Okay, so inshallah, tomorrow's sessions will focus on spirituality. So we're going to talk about the spiritual aspects of Ramadan. We're going to go over several of the du'as that you commonly use or hear during the month of Ramadan. So you already have a couple of them in your handouts. I'm going to give you another du'a tomorrow, and a recording of all of the du'as will be found, inshallah, on our SoundCloud account, and we will give you the link to that, inshallah, so you can go and practice along with the recording if you wish to do so.
And what I would ask is that if you can read the next 4 pages this evening, then we can just go it over tomorrow. Less reading exact and more summarizing, and then ask questions as we go along, right? So that could speed up the first part of the fifth, so we can jump into the spirituality section much earlier tomorrow than if we read through all of the pieces of this. Cool? So just do some reading tonight if you can.
Yeah, one more question. Next month, I got a CAT scan coming up. When they do the CAT scan, it's gonna be when Ramadan's in. So I have to shoot some fluid dye in me so they can see what's going on. Will that break my fast?
No.
Yeah, because it just shoot a dye in your body that just, yeah.
No. No.
Like, yeah, if it was something that you were drinking, that's something different.
No.
Something that shoot
I had to drink
All right, we'll close up with a dua, inshallah. I'm sorry, we'll close with a dua, inshallah.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.
Only the table's up, right?
Yeah, we can leave that one there.
Thank you, man.
They call it earlier.
I started to feel it right at the mic. I go, what is this?
I gotta go.
That would be nice. All right.
That would be consensus. That means that
It tells
all of the scholars